welcome to my kitchen. So, how do I decide what to cook if I don't have a recipe, I don't have a plan? Not surprisingly, it depends on two things. One is what I've got to use, and the other thing is what I fancy. They both play a role. Today, it's really cold outside. Apparently, it's going to snow. I've got the last sort of dregs of vegetables that are left over from Christmas, some cavolo that is yellowing, a few soft parsnips, a few potatoes, and I've got a big pack of pasture-fed mince that I had in the freezer. What am I going to do with that? Of course, I could just do like a ground beef casserole. I often do that. Like throw it all in a pot, put in some flavorings, make a casserole. I could, of course, do some sort of burger or meatball, but I'm too tired for that tonight. But it's Saturday night and we're not working tomorrow in the shop, so wanted to do something special. So I was looking at this beef, then my husband said, what if we made some mash with it? And then I thought, no, we're going to make a pie. We're going to make some mash, make a ground beef casserole, and then cover the casserole with the mash and brown it in the oven so it feels a bit more special. So that's what I'm going to do. Here are my root veggies. I rarely do just potato mash. They're already peeled, these parsnips, and I'm just going to be throwing them in a pot of salted water over here. The bits a bit smaller so that they don't take ages to soften. That's my potatoes. No, I don't peel them, I just scrub them. Does it look weird in the mash? Maybe, but I actually like the flecks of color. So this is all going to be boiling to make the mash while I start preparing the meat. Okay, so for the pie filling, I'm just preparing like a ground meat casserole or anything casserole. I always do it the same way, just changing the flavors and the ingredients. Always starting with an onion. Onions make a great flavor base, and I like cooking by layer. I'm always thinking in layers, layers of flavors, layers of textures, layers of ingredients. I usually start with onion, but it could also be leeks, ginger and garlic and lemongrass for something Asian. It could be carrots and celery and onion for something French. It could be spring onions, depending. Yeah, chop my onions roughly because that works for me. Do it as you please. The finer your onion, the more it will disperse. Okay, I'm gonna add some olive oil to my pan, a bit of salt, and put it on. Here is my greens, leftover cavolo from Christmas. There is some yellow edges, but you know, I cut those off and the rest is looking a bit overgrown, but really good. So that is not to be wasted. Stems are quite thick here, so I'll decide later whether I'll discard or freeze for my soup stock. I have a bag in the freezer where I freeze all the veggie scraps to put in stocks. And then I make a big batch of stock and the noodle soup and freeze the rest. Anyway, those kind of middle stems I'm just going to chop finely and stick into the onion. This can cook a bit longer with the onion and it will be just fine. I'll leave that aside for now, and when the onions have softened, I'll add the meat. Time to add the meat into the pan to kind of brown it a bit. And yeah, that is quite a lot of meat, but this meal is probably going to last us for at least 2, probably 3 days. So yeah, I do love leftovers. If it's something like a pie, obviously we will eat the same thing twice. If it's something else, then I often will just recycle and change things around. Well, there we go. That's what we've got. starting to brown, and as it's browning, I'm breaking it up. You can't really see for the steam because I've got the pot with the potatoes boiling there as well. Right, and now comes my favorite part, which is where I start to think about the flavorings. What am I gonna put in here to flavor my meat and therefore my pie? So, already got a bit of salt in there, but I'll probably add a bit more. In my book, a bit of extra salt is always good. If you're trying to make something salt, not salty, because salt brings out the flavors, you need to kind of add a little and keep tasting to find that magic point for you. I'm going to add some chili flakes. That looks like quite a lot, but this is Aleppo chili flakes. They're more flavorful than hot, and just a little heat is always nice. I will add some dried herbs. Could have been oregano, but my oregano pot is not near the camera right now, so I'm just adding the mixed herbs I just did there. Also got some roughly chopped garlic here. It also might seem quite a lot, but cooked garlic is never very garlicky. I've got some frozen parsley here. I'm going to put in quite a lot. Maybe some paprika to complement the chili flakes. Where's the paprika? Oh, there's my paprika. Oops, never do that. One should use a spoon to get spices in the pot. Don't think it's too much, but it was almost too much, almost a disaster. Maybe it wasn't too much, actually. I want a bit more sweetness, so I'm going to add some pomegranate molasses. I'm really just thinking flavor layers here. I want a sweet layer, a salty layer, an acidic layer. I'm not thinking ingredients. I'm not thinking, does this go with that? I've been doing this for a long time, so I almost don't need to taste it. But yeah, it's some sort of sweet sour thing that I think will contrast nicely with the math. And now I'm just going to keep this simmering while I add my greens. I'm just going to chop them finely. Does it matter whether it's cavolo, whether it's kale, whether it's cabbage, whether it's frozen peas, whether it's bits of broccoli? To my mind, it doesn't matter. It's not the same. Every combination will be different, but it's all tasty. I don't think that any of these choices is going to ruin my meal. I have trained my palate to not expect something to be exactly the same. I'm always curious to see how it's going to taste and how it's going to turn out this time. So I'm not the kind of person who thinks that something has to taste the right way. If you are someone who thinks that things have to be exactly the same every time you make it, then probably intuitive cooking isn't for you. But if you can go with a surprise and curiosity, then it's just so much fun and so much easier because you just play with the flavor. Right. Chop, chop, chop. I will just chop them up like this. That knife could do with some sharpening. It's working. Okay. And guess what? Yes, I'm feeling conscious about my knife skills too. They're not that great. They're not ninja knife skills, but you know, they're okay. They work. And that's the most important thing. So many cooking courses start by teaching you knife skills, whereas, you know, the most important thing is to learn how to layer your flavors, because in the end, that's what you want, right? You want a tasty meal. The rest isn't so important. Here we go. That's how it looks now. Colorful as I like it.
So I'm going to let it simmer a little bit, and then I'm going to get the mash done and layer it up and put it in the oven. Hooray! Just giving it another taste. It is pretty good, but somehow I decided I'm just going to stick in a bit of tomato puree after all. That is concentrated tomato, so it's not going to make it very tomatoey, but it's going to add that extra umami that you get from concentrated, sun-dried, roasted tomato. So just an extra layer of flavor, because I'm not one for boring food. So this does taste quite intense, but I'm going to put bland mash on top. So that's just going to be the perfect contrast to each other. Right, so that's my boiled potatoes and parsnip. And now I'm going to mash that. I'm adding olive oil, plenty of salt, a bit of pepper, and a good bunch of butter. And I've got my trusty hand masher here. What is it called? A potato ricer? I have no idea. Ooh, this looks so good. That's my mash. You can see the flakes of potato peels. You may think that's gross. I think it makes it look more interesting. Sometimes I add herbs to this. In this case, because it is going to go on as a crust, I'm going to add an egg in it. So this is just going to give it a bit more of a pastry structure. Yeah. So that's all mixed up. And now I'm going to layer it up. Look at this. Wow, this is my meat stew now. And I'm going to cover this with mash. This will do. Just going to put a few more flakes of butter on it. There we go. Ooh, here we go. Looks great, although it has drowned a bit, so a bit too much juice has come through the topping. But let's see what happens when it rests a bit. So, is that a mishap? I don't know if that's a mishap. It doesn't look as it should be. It might even correct itself once it cools down a bit and all the bubbling stops. Either way, it's going to be tasty, so I'm not worried about that. It's cooled down a bit now, and look how it looks. The bubbling was just over bubbling, and now it's calmed down, it's cooled down a bit. It looks great, and it's like a proper crust. Amazing. To serve. Ooh, this looks delicious.